And thank you all for having me. This is my first time kind of speaking about this topic because, as we know, the pandemic was kind of rough on a lot of industries, and so our career department was also cut. And so our academic advisors turned out to be career and academic advisors because they kind of go hand in hand depending on what you're looking to do. And so I'm just grateful to be here, and feel free if I can make something clear while I'm talking. I'm definitely more than welcome to kind of answering on the spot. I'm definitely a more interactive type of person. Else at the end, I'm sure there's going to be time for Q&A, and so feel free to save your questions for that time as well. And so to start it off, next slide, please. The first thing that I would like to do is just kind of set up a groundwork definition to just kind of level the playing field to understand what continuing education is. And so to just kind of, set the groundwork so we can all understand like what is continuing education, it pretty much just refers to the process of additional education and training after you have received a formal degree or certification program. You have a bachelor's, awesome. You want to go for a certificate, you want to go for a capstone, that's continuing education. Workshops, even things like this, continuing education. And I just would like to distinguish continuing education from professional development because they're similar, but they're different. Continuing your education will equip you with skills and knowledge needed in order to be innovative in driving the solutions that you're looking for your particular company, your position, whatever that may be. And finally, it increases your job opportunity selection, like the more skills you have under your belt, the more attractive you are to recruiters, the better you look to your current employer, which will also then, kind of translate into increasing your earning potential when when it's time for those reviews. And I've done X, Y, Z, and I've done these things that were not, like on my plan of development for the year. That increased that opportunity for you to be able to ask for more money or ask for more benefits from your current employers. So what does it look like? Most people, when we talk about continuing education, they think you have to be in the classroom, you have to be getting some type of advanced degree. And while that is a form, like I went back to school, for example, for my master's in order to go from nonprofits to start working in education. That was the best method for me, but that doesn't mean that's the only type of method out there. Right here, we're in this organization, that's continuing education. You being here, that's continuing education. Going to workshops, auditing courses, taking courses, even if it doesn't amount to a degree, listening to podcasts, reading books, all of those things count. And something that I would like to also share with folks is that informational interviews is also a form of continuing education. If you see somebody in a position that you find interesting to you, sit down with them, have coffee, have a drink, invite them to a wonderful place like this, pick their brain a little bit. What did you have to do to get where you are? What did your education look like? What are some certifications that you picked up along the way? What skills have you found useful to elevate your career, as you continue to progress? All of those things count as continuing education, even if you cannot put them on paper. Because once again, as back to the definition at the beginning, continuing education doesn't always have to be formal. It's just for you to have the opportunity to expand your knowledge and your skill set. And sometimes that's not necessarily in a classroom. But if you have more questions about what some of those things can look like, definitely more than open to answering questions about what may be needed and when, because there are times where a degree or certifications may be better for you in order to get you where you need to go, but in other times, maybe you just need to have a conversation. Maybe you just need to, go to 1 or 2 seminars, workshops, or conferences. Everything is different depending on your situation. So, how do you know what you need? And this is a great question because it's complex, but I've tried to break it down in how I advise my students who are kind of in the same positions where you all are in. And so the first step is assessment and reflection. Where are you in your career at this time? Where do you want to go? Sometimes you need to level set with yourself and kind of take a step back and see, are you where you would like to be? Can you see yourself doing this forever? And if that answer is no, if you find yourself out of a job right now, then that means it's time to think about and reflect internally, what do you want to do? And with that, what strengths do you have right now to leverage, and what areas of improvement can you do with the skills that you have? Because combining both of those things kind of what I call is your North Star, or in education, we call it your why. And your why is the one singular reason why you will continually come back, to working towards this goal. Because we're all adults, things are gonna happen. It can, different life situations can get in your way, but why are you gonna continue developing? That's what this assessment is for. So if you wanna get to the top of your career, you can definitely shoot for it. And the rest of these steps will definitely help you maintain like what the top of your pyramid looks like. Second is research and strategies. Something that I like to recommend to folks, look at the different positions where you can see yourself in. Look at the minimum qualifications and then look at the preferred qualifications. What do you have? What do you not have? If you meet all the minimum qualifications, great. If you are seeing that you could use some development in the preferred qualifications, those are some of the areas that can help you stand out to recruiters, as well as just anybody reviewing job applications, for you to be able to rise to the ranks, because we are in a very competitive market. And so they're not looking for the minimum anymore. They're looking for who can I hire to maximize my efficiency within my organization in this particular job. And so the better the skills that you have and the more skills that you have that aligns with the minimum and the preferred, increases your likelihood of at least landing that interview. From there, that's all you, but and in the research, but at least getting your foot in that door to get in front of a set of people, sometimes it requires you to have those skills on paper. Find what those are, find what sticks out to you, and then start maybe adding that to a list of things that you need to add to your knowledge toolbox. And finally, plan and execute. We're all adults, as I said at the beginning. So you may have families, you may have people you need to take care of, you may have pets that need your attention 80 hours a day, what have you. You have to be realistic with the time that you have in your life so you can schedule those needs that you need to develop. When you do that and you're able to be realistic with the time that you have available, it's more likely that you will continue and succeed and actually complete that, versus, I need some formal education in, let's say, social media marketing, but I consistently make excuses for why I can't work towards that because things are getting in the way. So be realistic, reprioritize sometimes, and just make space in your calendar and make sure you stick to it, or you find ways to add it into your schedule if that's what's important to you. And then finally, and this is non-academic, but something that I learned when I joined my Greek life organization in college that just stuck with me is called the 5 Ps. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Everything that I've spoken has dealt with continuing education, but it's important to acknowledge some non-education factors that you should also take into consideration. So just for some numbers, and this was off a LinkedIn report in 2018, 143 million workers in the US had LinkedIn profiles. Over 20,000 companies in LinkedIn were using the platform to recruit, and over 3 million jobs were posted on LinkedIn every month. I'm on LinkedIn now, and I know almost every 20 minutes I'm getting an update on what's on the market. And so this is 2018, but I know those numbers are way more significant now. And so it's important to at least, one, keep your social media profile updated. And so I always recommend for people to have at least LinkedIn, because that's a way to network. Everything that I've taught, like you have LinkedIn Learning, which, can serve as a method of continuing education. You have recruiters there, you have jobs being posted there. It's really kind of like an all-in-one tool that is emerging as one of the leaders, of recruitment for jobs. And so make sure you keep it updated. Add any certifications, add, your education. You don't have to be super, super active, but at least keep your data updated of what you're doing and where you are. Secondly, maintain a running CV. You sit down, you get ready to apply for jobs, or, you're looking at a position like, do I have this? But then that daunting task of putting together a resume and or a cover letter can definitely take some time. If you have a running CV of all the things that you're doing, all the things that you're learning, it's simple as copy and paste it when the time comes. I like to say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. If you always have this information at your hand, you don't really have to do too much when you're starting to apply. Develop and nurture professional relationships. Sometimes when we leave jobs, we leave those people behind. I recommend that if you've worked with folks, if you've done work with folks, even your bosses or supervisors, especially if you're looking to have those same people provide recommendations in the future for you to be able to get jobs, keep those connections. Have tea, say what's up, send us a LinkedIn message like, hey, I saw you posted this. Just keep that conversation going and nurturing at least once, twice a year, just to make sure that they know that you're still thinking about them, so it's not such a cold call when you need to call on them. Clean up your digital footprint. Google your name, Google your nickname with your name, however that you presented yourself in the public, because you need to know what's out there about yourself, because especially in marketing, I know it's very forward-facing. And so being able to know what your name is tied to out there on the web is important. You got an old MySpace? Delete that. If there's any information on there that you don't like, find out ways to remove it from the internet so it's only showing the things that you wanted to show. And finally, do not ignore your emotional intelligence. Layoffs are hard. People get angry. It's sadness. It's disappointment. You may not like your job that you're in. Your boss could be micromanaging. You're looking for a new position, a way out, whatever that looks like. Recognize those feelings and give yourself that opportunity to feel those feels. So when you are reaching out to recruiters, when you are applying to jobs, you don't have a chip on your shoulder and carrying that energy through what you write and the different interviews that you're giving. So it's best to give yourself that time to process. And when you come to that, that place that you need to be to move forward, that's when you're really able to put your best foot forward to talk to the people that you need to with the good energy to bring that good energy back to you. And so all of that's my contact information. It's my LinkedIn. It's my email. Feel free to reach out whenever. They reached out to me on LinkedIn initially about this, and so feel free to ask questions. I'm always available to help, and feel free to use Division of Continuing Studies too as a mechanism, and I can talk more about that as well.
Awesome, thanks, Ace. And so, coming from a recruiter's perspective, I just want to kind of follow up and say there's a lot of things that I am going to be somewhat repeating, but I think that's also great because we kind of see eye to eye in different industries at different aspects. So kind of to get started, I wanted to pose the question, what are the most valuable certifications, programs, degrees, any type of learning that's from a recruiter's perspective? And well, ultimately, it really depends. And that's great because it can be very flexible and there's not necessarily one way or other. Generally speaking, candidates do stand out when they have any type of additional experience because it tells me a number of things. It tells me, it tells me that they're willing to learn, right? So that they're willing, even if they don't meet all of those requirements, that they're going to be able to come onto that job and be able to learn it to be successful. It tells me that, as the business changes, that they're going to be able to change with it. And they might even be the ones championing that change because they're out in the industry learning what's best. And it also tells me that they're committed to themselves, to bettering themselves, which will, in the end, lead to bettering the company. But getting back to it depends. There are a number of things that it really depends on, in my opinion. So first would be the market. So we're in the Madison market, and we hold a lot of value to a degree from the UW. We do. We employ their alumni. We have current students as interns. Our employees attend continuing education courses there. They use our services. We're very connected, and we like to hire people that are local. So a lot of times we do end up hiring. But that's not to say that that is the best degree and one that you need to have. I have a degree from IPFW. I'm sure none of you have ever heard of that. I have a master's from PFW. Again, none of you have probably heard of that. If I said Purdue, you'd be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, right? So it's not necessarily having a degree from a big name university or wherever it is. It's how can you market it? How can you show that value within the market that you're in? If here, the UW is a big market, well, how does mine stand out compared to them? Because there are ways that it does stand out. Other things to kind of consider are the more free online courses, right? Those have been growing exponentially in the last probably couple years, but definitely in probably the last 2. I think they can be great resources, but I wouldn't necessarily put all of my weight on them as far as making yourself stand out from a candidate. I think they're great for personal development, and I think they could be used for that, but I can easily sign on into LinkedIn Learning, take a course in the background while I'm doing other work, and then add that certification or whatever it is to my profile, right? I'm not gonna put as much weight on that unless you are taking it an extra step to tell me, this is what I learned, this is how I applied it to my day-to-day, whatever it is, this is the impact that I got from it, right? We need to see that little extra step to understand that there was impact. Otherwise, I'm just gonna assume that you're just adding things to add things to make your profile or resume or whatever it is look better. And one other thing, if you are using those, is making sure that they're relevant to what it is you want to do or what it is you are doing. If I see 20 other courses on there that have little relevance, again, I'm going to look over it and go to the next profile, whatever it is. It also depends on the role. So, and I would argue that this is probably a bigger consideration for me compared to a degree or certificate or course. So the last probably about 2 years, there's been a huge shift into skills-based hiring compared to degrees. So having a bachelor's degree, that's no longer a requirement on most job descriptions. Now we're wanting to see you have these 5 skills, you have this many years of experience doing digital marketing, whatever it might be. And if you look at my slides, I have 2 different positions that I was hiring for in this last year. One is a product marketing manager and the other is a digital marketing manager. And the ones that are colored or highlighted are the specific skill sets that I was asked to look for. So when I go onto LinkedIn for the product marketing manager, I'm gonna type in product marketing manager, B2B, SaaS, new product, startup, and that's what I'm gonna base my complete search on, and then I might then differentiate candidates from there. So it's really important as you're approaching development is being very intentional about what it is that you want to do and then highlighting that again in your profile, because if I don't get those hits, I'm not going to see your profile. So we really have to make sure that we are being explicit in what we're saying there. And then one other thing that kind of ties in with it is industry. So what industry are you wanting to be in, and what are those specific requirements? At Sonic Foundry, we are a tech company, so for us, it's very important to have software as a service, SaaS experience. It's important to have B2B experience, right? Depending on what industry it is, making sure that you have those skill sets that align, because it's gonna give you a little easier of an opportunity to get your foot in the door. Next. And then one thing that Ace had mentioned is one benefit that I think is often massively overlooked, but a huge benefit to this conversation today and to development is networking. And it happens very naturally in professional development, in continuing education, whatever it might be. And those connections, right, they lead to new ideas. They lead to information sharing, information interviews, which are a great way to get your foot into an industry, mentorships, which are even probably a better way to get in there, or even other career or sport opportunities. And probably the biggest thing that I have seen in the last year are job referrals. I've seen so many where people are, vouching for others on LinkedIn or wherever it is, and that's helping them land jobs and landing them with maybe not even really applying or putting much effort into it. And right in times of layoffs, network is going to really make a huge difference, and I'll get back to that in a second, but I wanted to touch a little bit more on networking. So when you're coming to places like this, when you are taking courses, whatever it is you're doing, right, making the time to make those connections, but the biggest key is maintaining them. So I think it's really easy to come here and say, hi, this is who I am, but then how are we continuing that relationship beyond? Is it, sending them a note, checking in how they're doing, sharing an article that you think they might like, interacting on LinkedIn. You probably notice I'm saying LinkedIn a lot. That is where my whole world really revolves around. But I think a lot of us tend to wait to rely on our network until we need something, whether it's a job, whether it's information or surveys. If we are a little bit more on top of our networks day to day, they're going to be there when we need it most. Beyond having a really robust network, I think another important conversation is how do we demonstrate that value, again, in terms of professional development, regardless of what it is, in the eyes of a recruiter. So I'd say the first thing I like to consider is format. So resumes are pretty much the standard, but they're not great. And they're not going to go away by any means, but there's a lot of limitations. You can't show leadership, creativity, your soft skills. There's a lot of things that you can't really show well on a resume, and professional development even. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, continuing to find other ways to demonstrate that. Hint, hint, LinkedIn is a great way to do it. If it's not your thing, personal websites, portfolios, anywhere where you can show off your work, show a little bit of who you are, that's gonna go a long way, because as a recruiter, we really rely on that story to be told about who you are, how you're doing things, how you approach work, and you really can't see that in a resume. It's also helpful that you quantify your accomplishments or your impact. So, and you were saying this at one point, Ace, but I like a formula that's called XYZ. So I accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. So I negotiated reduction in cost to perform support by 40% by designing and using results from online auctions of multiple vendors, right? It tells a clear story, it tells my impact, and it tells me, okay, this person can come in here doing this by doing that, and it'll get me this result, right? Very powerful in my mind. And then really the last thing I would say as far as LinkedIn or even resumes is really optimizing it to the job that you're looking for. If there's jobs that you are applying to, take keywords from their job descriptions and put it directly into your resume. Those hits are gonna make your profile stand out. If you're making a career change and you don't quite have that experience and can't add it in, tell me ways in which you can do it, or ways in which you've done something similar. And if you can't say that, how would you approach it, right? We don't always need to have all the answers, but we wanna have an idea of how you're gonna go about doing it. And then next. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on, just because it's a big topic of today, is layoffs and workforce reductions in workforce. So there is a difference between them. Layoffs is when there's a separation of employment because there is a reduction in work, right? We don't have enough work for you to do. A reduction in workforce is when we are cutting that headcount completely, typically because of financial reasons, and there's no plans to replace it at all. So in terms of layoffs, when there's a reduction in work, having continuing education, showing your learning, expanding your skill set, it's gonna differentiate you, especially if those skill sets are going beyond what it is you need, because you're adding greater value to the team, to the department, to the company. But people need to know about it. I know so many people that go out and do these things and then they don't tell their manager or their manager's manager or their team. If they don't know, right, it's not gonna matter. So making sure that you're being very collaborative in your relationship around learning, telling people, sharing, hey, this is the impact. I did this and this is what happened, right? It's a little way to also celebrate your successes. Going to reductions in workforce, it's a bit more challenging because you can't always really, I don't want to say protect, but save your job by doing additional things. A lot of times at Sonic Foundry, we went through a reduction in workforce in December, and it was solely due to financial reasons. We had to reduce headcount to be able to put ourselves in a position to stay in business, to get to where we needed to today. And people were impacted across all departments, across all skill levels, across all tenures. There wasn't really gonna be necessarily one thing that would save a person over the other. So unfortunately, there's not always a way to really safeguard your position, but if you are continuing to develop yourself, again, recruiters are gonna see that when it comes time to then applying for different jobs, you're going to stand out. It might be a little easier for you to land that next role. So the last thing that I want to say before turning it over is, one, always keep your resume, profile, whatever it is, up to date. It's so hard to go back when you've been at a place for 5 years and like, oh yeah, what did I all do in these 5 years? When big things happen, when exciting things happen, go add it to your resume, go add it to your profile, whatever it is. Two, we don't know when layoffs are going to happen, when reductions in workforces are going to happen. So don't wait to do it until then, because that's when you're stressed. That's when you're feeling everything, and just nothing is looking great, right? Always kind of be prepared, and kind of going back to that point number one, right? Have our resumes updated, have our profiles updated. Three, making sure we're staying connected, especially in our networks. If you don't have a network today, right now is a really great time to start working on it. But I mean, LinkedIn, like again, I said, it's a great resource. You can easily reach out to connect people, to say, hey, I want to connect. I'm interested in what you're doing. I like the post you're talking about. It doesn't have to be a super big thing. And then just staying, liking it every once in a while, throwing a comment on it. That little bit goes a long way for engagement. And then the last thing is, I would encourage you to always be interviewing. Even if you love your job and have no intention of leaving, if someone reaches out and asks you if you would be interested, just say yes, because you never know, one. Two, it's always good to see what else is in the industry, in the market, what they're doing, what they're looking for, because it kind of gives you an idea too, like, oh, I don't have that skill set. Is that something that would be good for my current job? It gives you a good idea of what people are paying in the market. So making sure that you maybe in your current job are being paid. And then every once in a while, you might be like, hey, yeah, I love my job. I'm confirmed it. Or you might be, hey, maybe it's time for me to actually explore this a little bit more seriously. And then I guess the last piece is, it's really good practice. If you haven't interviewed for 5 years, it's stressful trying to go into it. If you stay up on top of it, and not saying all the time, but it does make a difference, especially when you don't have that pressure of having to find a job at that moment, when you're just interviewing to just interview and learn. Yeah, and that's all I have. Thank you.
So my name's Alyssa. I am a previous AMA board member, so excited to be back here at Craft Marketing. And I recently started at SC Johnson in Milwaukee after completing my MBA. So I feel like I'm kind of a case study in how professional development can kind of help you get to where you want to go. So it's exciting for me to be able to tell this story, since I feel like I spent a lot of years thinking about what I wanted to do and just not really knowing how to get there, or just not really acting on it. So I feel like once I finally started really making a plan and taking some action, I'm excited that I finally got to where I want to be. All right. So I wanted to do a quick overview of sort of where I came from and how I got here today. So I did do my undergraduate degree at the UW, degrees in English and journalism, which somehow turned into marketing, because I feel like you can start anywhere and get into marketing eventually. My first sort of professional job was at a Yellow Pages advertising agency, which is going to kind of show my age a little bit. But I was doing media planning there. Lasted about 9 months there because it was just not really what I thought it was going to be. Then I went to a small tech startup, which was at the time called My Weather. It no longer exists, but it was part of, or kind of like a spin-off of a larger company that I think does still exist, called Weather Central. Kind of a meteorology company that did broadcast media graphics. So that's where I kind of got interested in marketing. I started out as an account manager, and then started to do some more sort of like communications related tasks, and just realized what marketing was and that I really enjoyed it. So stayed there for 4 years. Then I fulfilled my lifelong dream of moving to Southern California for a couple years. And then I had the interesting experience while I was out there to work at a small architecture company as sort of a one-person marketing team. So kind of got that experience where I was doing a little bit of everything. I spent a year doing some administrative work at Honda Financial, but we'll just skip over that because that was irrelevant, really. So that next icon is the development one, the architecture company. So that was kind of where I started really leading marketing work and just really kind of understanding more of what it was about. After that, I moved back to Wisconsin, ended up at a company that's now called Slipstream. It's a sustainability nonprofit on the west side. Jessica actually still works there right now. Started out as a marketing project manager, doing a lot of like social media posts, articles, ads, all that fun stuff. And then became a marketing manager where I was developing the marketing plans and doing budgeting and all that kind of stuff. So kind of more of a traditional marketing role. But after 7 years, I just kind of wasn't super fulfilled or challenged by it anymore. I also wanted to learn more about marketing, so that's when I got involved in AMA Madison. So I joined the board in 2014 and then eventually became president from 2019 to 2020. And at that point, I was, really interested in the extra work I got to do and all the learning I got to do through AMA, but knew that I was still kind of at a standstill, just didn't really know what I wanted to do next, and knew I wanted to kind of move ahead in the marketing field, but didn't really know what the heck my next move was. So my next circle there is a question mark. I really didn't know what to do next or where I was going to go, and plus the pandemic had just started. So with my next slide, luckily for me, the pandemic was kind of a blessing in disguise. I know it was obviously a really bad time, and a lot of people experienced a lot of just loss and struggle and whatnot during that time. But for me, it kind of gave me a chance to sort of reflect on what was really going on, what I wanted to do. So if you start clicking a couple more times, all the fun questions I was asking myself, like, what is next for my career? Am I actually happy in what I'm doing? Is this even fulfilling? And maybe most importantly, how can I make more money? Because just felt like I was stuck. And it was just like, what's next? I want to be able to buy a house someday and all those fun things. So next slide. Just kind of thinking more about what I wanted. One thing that I knew that I definitely wanted was I had spent most of my marketing career marketing services, so architecture, the architecture industry, and then sustainability, so energy efficiency. And that was fine for a while, but I've always really wanted to kind of see the results of my marketing, like on TV commercials or in stores. I just always thought that'd be so fun to be able to show my family, like, hey, look, like I did this, like they're not seeing anything I'm doing for some rural Minnesota utility that they've never heard of. So I just wanted to do something more exciting, something that would really kind of just get me excited day to day on what I was doing. I also knew that within marketing, I kind of was always really interested in branding. So kind of like developing brands, like brand identity and things like that. I always knew I wanted to go back to school, but wasn't always sure exactly what for, whether it be maybe something in the English or journalism field, or since I didn't have a marketing degree, it would kind of make sense to actually get some formal education in marketing. And yeah, kind of like I mentioned with working with products, I always really wanted to work at like a big company, just kind of like a big corporation, and just sort of have that experience. I'd always worked at like smaller companies, like I think the biggest one was like 120 people. So always just wanted that experience. So as I'm thinking about all these things, I get an email. One email literally kind of made all the difference. So back in like 2015, I had gone to some sort of like informational sessions at the UW for the MBA program and just kind of learning what it was about. I had some friends that I knew had gone through it in the past and raved about it and said that it was like the best thing they've ever done. So years back, I had looked into it, but it was just kind of scary, like not working for 2 whole years. How the heck would I afford that? Or I was dreading having to do like the GRE or GMAT or anything like that. That was honestly like the main thing that held me back for 7 years or however many years it was. I just was terrified of failing that, or just, not getting in, not getting accepted, all those things. So one day I got an email that said, due to the pandemic, we are waiving the GMAT and the GRE or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, this is my chance. Like, I have to do this now. Like, this will never happen again. I can't even believe this is a thing. So I was just like, talked to my husband or fiance at the time. And I was just like, I really, really want to do this. Him and even my family were kind of against it. They're like, oh my God, you can't stop working for 2 years. Like, how are you going to pay for it? And like, just all this stuff. And annoyingly being kind of negative about it, but I just knew like, I don't care. Like I can't listen to other people. Like if this is what I feel like I really want to do, and like just feeling unfulfilled and like I knew I could do something more. I was just like, this is literally the chance. I might as well just apply, like see what happens, like find a way to make it work. And so at that point it was like, okay, no more excuses. Like the main thing I was afraid of, it's really not a factor anymore. So I just need to apply. So I revisited the UW MBA program. Luckily with the UW, they have specializations that you can do for an MBA. So it's not just like general business. Like you can select, like I did the Center for Brand and Product Management, which like was perfect for exactly what I was interested in. You can do finance, you can do real estate. There's like an HR specialization. There's I think like 7 or 8 different things that you can pick from. So kind of looking further then into the Center for Brand and Product Management, I realized, this sounds like exactly what I need to do to get to where I want to go. So, obviously a highly ranked program. They do a lot of great marketing for themselves about, just kind of sharing like job placement rates, like average salaries post-graduation. They partner with all these like huge companies for recruiting, and like a lot of the graduates end up at big companies like Kimberly-Clark and Procter & Gamble and all these things. And then I also, like I mentioned before, did know a couple people from school previously that did go through the program and just thought it was like the best thing that they could have ever done. So I was sold. Application process, this is kind of where professional development played a part for me. So I had to do 3 essays. One of them was describe a time you demonstrated leadership in a way that made an enduring impact. And this is where I was able to really draw on a lot of my AMA experience, and I was so thankful that I had that for this, because if I just talked about some random thing that happened at work, I just don't think it would have been as impactful. But I was able to have, like this big non-work example that showed like all the things that you talked about, like, it shows that you're like a motivated, passionate person that values, continuous learning and all these different things and developing skills outside of work. So I was able to talk a lot about my involvement in the AMA board and just different things that I had done while I was on the board or while I was president. And then also was able to utilize a past president and person that I knew well from the board as one of my references, who actually had to do a very thorough kind of fill out this long form and everything about me for a reference. So I feel like I was so happy that I had that to draw on for the application, because I think that probably really helped set me apart. And needless to say, I obviously was accepted. I completed the program just in May 2022, graduated, and just a couple, takeaways from my experience were I was probably the oldest person in my class, which, whatever. I mean, I knew I'd probably be one of the older ones. I think I was 39 when I started. Maybe I was 40, actually. I'm not sure. But so I felt a little weird sometimes, but I was actually glad that I went back when I did, because there was a lot of people that were like mid to late 20s. There was definitely some that were like low to mid 30s too. I wasn't just like, the oldest one by far, but I could tell that for some of the younger people that didn't have nearly as much experience, like I would sometimes like sit there in the classes and wonder, like, they can't even relate to this like at all. They haven't even had a marketing job before, because there was a lot of career switchers. So I felt like I kind of got a lot more out of the MBA experience than maybe some people, because I could actually relate it to other experiences that I've had, or like known how that's actually going to affect things in the workplace. So I was kind of glad in a way that I waited as long as I did. It turned out fine. I thought going back full-time was great. There are some people that can do like a part-time sort of like executive MBA or whatever, where they just do like evening classes. And I think it takes 3 or 4 years to complete the MBA, but I just feel like there's so much going on outside of even just the courses, like all these other like networking events and informational sessions that you're supposed to attend, that I don't know how I could ever do that on top of working, even part-time. So I would say if you're thinking about going back, just kind of cut the cord and just do it full-time and get the most out of it that you can. And also, the financial aspect was really scary for me and just not sure how the heck I was going to not work for 2 years and all that. But I think a lot of people do get scholarships that cover at least a good portion of the first year. And then the second year you can be a TA, which covers a lot of your tuition and also health insurance. So it can be done. I had no idea that I didn't apply for any scholarships or anything, and I just was given some. So that was a nice surprise. Definitely made it a lot more doable. So if you're worried about the financial aspect, there are solutions to that to make it doable as well. And then in addition to the education, just the direct connections to these large corporations that you can get. I mean, you get like people's email addresses at like Adobe or like Amazon, just all these alumni that are willing to go above and beyond to just speak with you and kind of learn about what you want to do and how they can help you get there, which is awesome. And then I probably got the best interview training through the MBA program that I ever got. There was actually a whole semester, it was like not an official course, but a whole semester, like weekly session that we had to do on interviewing, and then we did tons of mock interviews for internships and all this stuff. So I feel like I got better, if anything, at interviewing. I still hate it with a passion, but I learned how to at least approach it and be more prepared and kind of, just be a little better at it. Some frameworks that are really helpful. And then I know that we've all talked about how important having a network is, but I feel like the MBA network that you walk away from is super invaluable, not only just the other students that all end up at these huge companies that you might want to work at someday, but the faculty and just all the other alumni and all these people at these companies that you can get to know if you make the effort. So, that was me. All fall and winter. I hate interviewing with a passion. So needless to say, I found reasons to not start interviewing until like October. Even though I graduated in May, I just kind of felt like I needed a break. I got married also in June, so that was, a little bit of a distraction. So once I finally got like the courage and energy to start interviewing, I think I did some things right, maybe some things I would have done differently. I definitely, waited a little too long. It didn't end up mattering in the end, but I wish I just would have like started sooner and a little more gradually. I was purposely like super selective this time around because it's like, I just went through all this MBA stuff. Like I want to end up with something that I really, really want. But since I hadn't interviewed in like 7 years or 9 years or whatever at that point, I kind of wish I would have just applied for some stuff I didn't really maybe care that much about, just to like start off slower and like some lower stakes interviews that I didn't really care about just to get some practice. Cause my first one that I went into was this job I really wanted with Marriott. And afterwards I was just like, oh my God, that was horrible. And I was just like, that was really dumb of me to not just like get some practice before I started interviewing for stuff I really, really wanted. Also, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this STAR story interview framework, but if you are not, for some reason, I kind of had heard of it before the MBA program, but they're like obsessed with it. It's situation, task, action, and results. So it's just kind of like a nice framework for when you're asked those behavioral questions, like tell me about a time when you did X, Y, Z. So it kind of helps you to like really frame up those stories. And that's something I spent a lot of time on before my SC Johnson interview, was just refining over and over those stories to make sure, especially like the situation and task, kind of like the intro portion of the question, like kind of setting the stage for what you did. You just have to make it really concise. Like you can get sucked in really easily to like blabbing on and on about some backstory of some project you had to do or whatever. But just making sure you have, specific examples to use to answer these different questions, and be able to just kind of rattle off like I did this and I did this and this, and then this is what the result was. So, and then just overall like experiences from my MBA and then also all my AMA experience. I drew on both of those for a decent amount of probably my STAR stories. That kind of helped me stand out and just show like the breadth of my experience. So I wasn't saying over and over like one time at Slipstream, that would get like so old and boring if like all your examples were from like your last job or something like that. So if you can find different experiences or things that you've done for like leadership examples or like working with a team, different things like that, the professional development was definitely a good resource for that. So, finally I got to the next step in my career journey. So like I said, I ended up at SC Johnson, which was like my top three choices since I started the MBA. So very, very excited about that. Right now I am working on what's called the brand and product expression team. So it's kind of like a fluffy term for sort of like identifying what brand stories are going to resonate with consumers, and then how that's going to translate into like product claims, and then sort of like the marketing strategy, or the communication strategy. So, for example, right now I am working on the Pledge brand, and then also this global brand that's called Mr. Muscle. And then I just got assigned to start working on Windex, which I'm super excited about because obviously huge brands. So right now, just kind of finished working on a Windex project where, like on the front top part of the bottle, like right below the trigger, sometimes they have like an extra sticker. They call it like on the neck of the bottle or whatever, and it'll have like some exciting claim. Like I think one of the latest ones was 100% ocean-bound plastic. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. It actually sounds really bad. I did not make that one up. But it sounds like, oh, this is going straight into the ocean. Like that doesn't sound good. And they realized that didn't work out the way it was supposed to. But that's the kind of stuff that I'll be working on, is kind of picking out like what is that big exciting claim that's going to like draw someone in at the shelf and, make them want to choose these products. So, So I guess just for kind of like a game plan, figure out what you really want, sort of like where you really want to go, and research what it might take for you to get there. Someone said, I think like looking at a job description for like the next job that you might want, and like seeing what some of the required and then ideal skills are, and see if you have those, and then make a plan as to how you can get those things that you don't have yet. Also identify any roadblocks. So like, for me, I felt like I was kind of trapped because I didn't know how I was going to ever pay for an MBA and stuff like that. So just try to like identify what those things are and figure out if there's any way that you can overcome those, and then just make it happen. Last thing is, I guess, just like some indirect benefits of professional development. So obviously, you're going to learn skills that you can put on your resume or put on your LinkedIn, all those kinds of things. But and I know we talk about networking a lot, and everybody talks about networking, which that was kind of like interviewing for me, which was kind of like, oh my gosh, I have to like go to this event, and like, sometimes you don't want to, but you feel like you should, or you have to. Like, what helped me was to kind of come up with a plan before going to that event. Like, see if you can find out who's going to be there beforehand, like if there's a RSVP list or something, and maybe identify like 2 people that it might make sense to try to like find while you're there, and maybe research a little bit about them on LinkedIn. So you can go up to them and say like, oh, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn that you're doing this. This sounds really interesting, and start a conversation about it. So try to have like a goal associated with networking events. Something I still actually need to do now at SC Johnson is like find an actual mentor, somebody who you can identify that like you want their job next, or someone that you see has had a really interesting career path that you would want to emulate. I still need to do that, and I think that's really important. Also, for an indirect benefit of professional development, just being able to learn a new skill or work on a weakness. Like, so for me with the AMA, I didn't really have any other like leadership experience. I was, I think, a marketing project manager at the time, so I wasn't leading a team. I wasn't managing people. I was like, how the heck am I ever going to show that I have leadership aptitude? So joining an organization like the AMA board really helped me with that. And also, like has been said already, just being able to demonstrate passion for your profession and desire to learn. I think that's probably the most important, so that, whether or not you come into a potential interview not having every single skill that they want, you can still give examples of ways that you've, gone above and beyond to learn something new or lead people or whatever it might be. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
So from what I can understand from your question, you're a generalist, but you're looking to add some specificity. I don't know if that's the word, but to what you're doing. Is that correct? Sweet. That is a great question. And my recommendation would be to look for programs that speak directly to what you're looking to do. And so, for example, capstone programs are an awesome way to be accredited, have that on paper, and also it's almost like an accelerated program to learn everything that you need to do to make a career switch. And so if you look at graduate level programs, certificates, things like that, especially if you're looking to have something like more knowledgeable on paper, credit programs may be great for you if you're looking to especially make that switch and go into something that's more direct, which could sometimes lead to you maybe leaving where you are and going to somewhere else where you can get that type of role. And so if you can get something that's credited, and there's a lot of flexible programs out there right now, especially after the pandemic hit, at least in the realm of education, online degrees, certificates, things like that, professional development opportunities increased dramatically. Like there were a lot before the pandemic, but there are a ton of opportunities now. And if you inquire within the universities, there's most of the time funding to at least help get you going. And then as a returning adult student, check the university that you may be like interested in for continuing education, like a department, because 9 times out of 10, they may also have funds to help offset some of that education costs. Additionally, there are also other kind of like online programs such as like Udemy. I'm blanking right now, but there's other, like I can like send the information, but there's other online resources where you can get certifications. You can kind of do it on your own time. And it may not necessarily be directly from the university, but a lot of these places work with university professors where it can still be accredited if you are looking for the certificate. And so you can take a course or you can take a series of courses to earn a certificate that will also, kind of be attractive to employers, recruiters, and, enhance your knowledge in that aspect.
Great question. So she asked, how do you find certain skill sets within LinkedIn as a recruiter, right? So how I typically find it is when I use Recruiter Lite, which is a platform within LinkedIn, there's a skills section all the way at the bottom of your profile where you can type in, digital marketing, whatever it is, a whole list of skill sets. And those are what usually are the hits. And then they will also come up in your about section, which is a great way to put it. And then every once in a while, it will show up in your, like where you have your job listed and those bullet points or whatever it is. But I would say that what I first see are that skill section on the bottom, because it will, I should really have a picture of it. I feel like that would make more sense. Yeah, but it will show me someone's name, their current title, how long they've been there, and it will show me the highlighted skills that I'm specifically looking for. And then I have to go into your profile to then read more. So it's not a great way always. And a lot of times you need to, as a recruiter, you have to go in and look. But I would say making sure it's in that skill section and definitely in your about, and then potentially in your, right under your name, there's that little title section where you can say what your title is or where you're working. I think that's a great spot to put it too.
And I think I'll be doing my job injustice if I don't plug the Division of Continuing Studies here. We have a lot of programs. I advise a lot of populations that already have degrees and kind of like are looking for the next step, what's next, how can I improve my current job? And so there's a lot of different certificates, capstones, credit and non-credit that are available where you're more than welcome to take advantage of and to just take into consideration that, You can also audit courses if you're just looking for content information. And so it's called being a special student. And so you can audit courses for a fraction of the cost of the total of courses if you're just looking to gather the knowledge. They cannot be participatory courses like Spanish, for example, but you can do a non-credit like special course. But let's say you are, interested in marketing, you just want to sit in on the lectures. You can apply to be a special student as long as you have the permission from the professor to just kind of sit in on courses. It's a few $100s for the entire semester. You can sit in, you can look at the coursework, you can participate in the discussions, things like that as well. And so definitely keep us in mind, if you're in Madison and looking for some of those continuing education opportunities.
Yeah, I would. So the question is, how can you show off your continuing education that maybe isn't a certificate? And I would put it in your about section. If you're talking about LinkedIn, I'd be like, here's a course I'm taking. This is maybe why I'm taking it. Give me a little backstory. And then maybe it's how it's impacting whatever it is you're doing. If it's not, then what are you hoping that you'll get from it? I think that's probably the easiest way, and way that I would like to see, or when I do see, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's exciting that they're doing it. It's great to see that they're still learning. Otherwise, it is a little tough because it wouldn't come up unless it's in a conversation. If we get to that interview process and we ask those questions specifically, or you're sharing. So I would say the about section is probably the way you can best demonstrate it.
Something to add, not necessarily to that, but is where you work, is that different from the UW extension? It's different? Because I did like a project management certificate program, I don't know, like 2016 or something through UW extension. So that's like another potential resource. And then I know I was also looking at some like leadership, I think it was ultimately a certificate. It was like a six period course or something over the course, of like 6 weeks. And that was at like, I guess was it Madison College now? It used to be MATC or whatever. So yeah, just like other local things in the area too. They might have more like shorter term, like less expensive certificate or other training courses like that too. So.